Muhammad, already before he found his calling as a prophet, had a reputation for being a very experienced arbitrator. He demonstrated this on a particular occasion when there was dissent in the Meccan community. The occasion was that the structure surrounding the Kaaba had been burnt and needed to be restored. The stone supporting the Kaaba had been removed for a time. Now that restoration had been completed, there was some dispute who should have the honor of placing back the stone where it had been. This dispute proved intractable until Muhammad came up with a satisfactory solution for all. He suggested placing the stone in the midst of a blanket, and the blanket at each corner to be borne by a representative of each of the feuding parties. In this way, he found a solution that satisfied all. After Muhammad set up his community in Medina, he acted as judge and sat in court in the mosque. And with his death, that function and that office now had fallen vacant. This was a tremendous challenge for his successors, who needed to fill the judiciary. Understandably, they at first tried to fill that role themselves, but being successors, they were mindful that they needed to follow the Prophet's example. The first caliph already set out to gather what had been Muhammad's sayings and his deeds, the hadith and the sunnah, because together these would provide precedents and give advice for finding the right way, the sharia. And this body of knowledge grew. Not only did the sharia grow in volume, there were also more and more cases, and this became more and more of an issue as the Islamic empire expanded. The next caliph, Umar, therefore decided to devolve certain responsibilities. He appointed qadis in individual provincial cities, and also convened a committee in Mecca to resolve issues of legal principle. This committee was comprised of men who were called the mufti, and their decisions, their principal decisions, were called the fatwa. So Umar had a seminal impact on Islamic jurisprudence and on Islamic law. Umar gave advice to the qadis whom he delegated to individual cities. He said, never make a decision in anger. Follow wherever you can the example set by the Prophet, and otherwise apply your own reason. Reasoning skills were very important in Islam because Islam did not have an organized clergy, and it fell to lawyers and jurisprudence and judges to determine the right way forward. Over time, in different centers of the Islamic empire, as more and more cases were brought to courts and more judges settled disputes, delegated authority meant that in different places there were different traditions and different views that emerged over time. There were many law schools in early Islamic law, not a single one. Two of these that were especially important were those founded in Medina by Malik ibn Anas, and another one in Baghdad by Abu Hanifa. Both were very important in their respective regions, and both usually coincided in their judgments, but they had different approaches to how to handle traditions and how to use analogies in cases that were novel. Over time, Islamic jurisprudence was applied to many areas, including to one that I would like to turn to now, to public finance, and in public finance to an issue that is of great concern to anyone, the level of taxation. Ibn Khaldun, the sociologist and economist who lived centuries after Muhammad, has one engaging tale which sets out the complexity of public finance. It's a fairy tale. In this fairy tale, a caliph is on a hunting trip, and in his tent at night he hears a hooting owl. He is curious what that owl is saying, because the owl seems very agitated. A man who knows how to translate the hoots of owls is brought to the caliph, and he has unfortunate messages for the caliph. He says, that owl is so happy because he's telling all the other owls in the region that very soon only they will be inhabiting villages, because taxes are so high that many villagers are driven out of the country. The caliph is very upset when he hears this, but fortunately he takes this message to heart, and reduces taxes. Ibn Khaldun, in this fairy tale, explained what economists understand all too well as the Laffer curve, that taxes, when they are too high, will reduce economic growth. Ibn Khaldun used a fairy tale to illustrate this story, but the logic of the argumentation was already set out centuries before by the Qadi al-Qadi, the chief Qadi of Harun al-Rashid, Abu Yusuf. Abu Yusuf is the author of a book, Kitab al-Kharaj, which is about taxation and several other topics. In that book, Kitab al-Kharaj, Abu Yusuf demonstrates how going back to the example of the Prophet leads to rational decisions. He argues that taxes are too high because they no longer follow the example set by Muhammad after the conquest of Khaybar, when he set a tax rate proportional to harvests earned every year. Later caliphs ignored that rule. Osman, the third caliph, for example, was very pleased when from Egypt he received more taxes than he had expected, and he congratulated his Egyptian governor Amr al-As, saying, "The camel has given more milk than last year." But Amr al-As understood all too well that exorbitant taxes diminish the economic growth of a region. He wrote back to the caliph, "Yes, the caliph has given more milk, but all the camel's young have died." In this way, one sees an example how early Islamic law already pioneered work in law and economics through applying economic principles to legal issues.